In this lesson, we'll begin painting a texture map for our little imp character. So let's jump back into Mudbox. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the visibility on the pieces that we're not going to be working on. So the couch back I'll turn off, the cushions I'll turn off, the penny, and you can leave the parts of the actual character if you want to. Let me turn off the tag as well. Alright, and so now what we want to do is start to paint a texture for this guy. Right now his color is coming from the material, and we don't want that. We want, if we're going to be transferring this out, and we're going to be keeping this for our purposes in Mudbox, but assuming we want to transfer this out into our final result, we want to sort of have our texture drive all of the color information on this guy. So what we can do is go to layers. You can see if I select paint layers, right now we don't have any paint layers. And so you can think of paint layers as texture maps. We kind of talked about that earlier. So we need to create a paint layer. It's going to be based on the UVs that we created for this guy. So we've got those updated. We'll go to our paint tools, and just a quick way, as we saw earlier, is to just click on our model and we can create a new paint layer. We can call this something like base color. We can choose the size. Now keep in mind that this guy's UVs are spread over 3 different UV tiles. So if we pick a 1K texture, that's going to be 1K for the body, 1K for the head, 1K for the arms and legs. And so just keep that number in mind. I'm not going to do too much detail on this guy, and so I think 1K is going to be fine. Now we can choose the diffuse, which is the color, or we could choose to paint specular, gloss, incandescence, and we'll look at some of these as we continue on, but we'll start with just the diffuse color. We'll say OK. And that's going to create 1K map, basically 3 maps, really, because, again, 1, 2, and 3. But in Mudbox, we're all dealing with it seamlessly, so it's not going to really be that apparent to us that we're working with multiple textures. We don't have to do anything special. It shows up as one diffuse layer. And you can see it inside this group. So you could actually group together multiple layers in here. So for this base color, let's lay down a color. And so we can choose, let me choose kind of kind of a blue or green, and feel free to experiment with your own colors in here. That's not really important. The color itself is not really that important. So we'll choose the color, and if you wanted to, you could come in and start painting. Now we've got a stamp already applied, so I'm going to turn that off, and then I can just come in here and start painting. Now you can see the strength is at 60%, so I'm going to increase that strength, so I'm going to get full color, and I could come in and start painting on this. Now going in and trying to paint across all this guy just to kind of fill in the color is kind of tedious. So one quick thing that you can do is just come down here to flood paint layer and just flood that, and it'll fill that entire paint layer with color. And now you can see that that new color has been added. All right, we can also, we go to kind of turn off now the eyes in here. You can also isolate this guy. And so we've got our base color built in. Now what we can do is start to kind of break this up a little bit. So we can go into our paintbrush. Now we can select a stamp because we want that detail to not be just a smooth level of detail. We want to have it broken up a little bit. And so let me get something that's maybe a little bit darker and more saturated, and we can also change the hue a little bit. And we can start painting over the top of this. Now let's go ahead and choose to turn on mirroring, and we can come in and start to paint over this and just kind of break up the color that we have here. You can get something a little bit darker. It becomes a little bit more apparent. You can, if you want to, dial the lighting down if you want to do that. Kind of dial that in so that you're getting the look that you want. You can see our light here is a little bit yellow, and the color changes if I change that light, obviously. And so this is where that on target presentation comes in, because we could paint with a white light and get the color looking exactly the way that we want, but when we get into our final final outcome, which has a yellow light, the texture is going to look different. So obviously we want it, we want to create the texture in an environment that is similar to the environment that it's going to finally be in. And so we can come in here, just start to break this up a little bit. Just kind of come around here. This can get a little bit tedious, so I'm just going to do it kind of on a section, and then you can continue it across the rest of the surface. Okay, we can start to get something that is maybe a little bit more saturated, maybe a little bit more of a blue. Start to drop in some color to give him a little bit more of a saturated look. And really, the key is going to be layering on this. So you can come in here, drop in these different layers of color, and then just go back over them. And all that sort of buildup of paint will help you kind of get the look that you want to get. So I come in here, and then I could go ahead and layer that back down with something that's less saturated, kind of bring it back down to the grayish look. Again, just using that stamp to kind of break things up a little bit. What you could also do would be to come in and create a new paint layer. So we could come up here and say, okay, hit this little plus. I want to create a new paint layer. We'll call this whatever, something like detail. Again, we'll choose to make it diffuse, and it's going to drop this above our base color. And so with this detail selected, I could choose something, let's do maybe like a red, and I could drop this red color in on top of our texture. If you wanted to get maybe a different stamp, you could use a different stamp to create different effects, change the randomization. So we've got these sort of red spots going on. We'll kind of add them around his head here. Okay, so once we've added those red spots, they're actually on a different layer. And so we can come in here on this detail, and we can dial down the strength of the layer, so we could make those less apparent. We could also change the blend modes, so we could multiply them, and then we could dial down the strength to really get the effect that we want. And so you have a lot of control just by using the different paint layers, blending them all together. So spend a little time adding a base color, doesn't matter what color you add, and then just break it up. And I would just use some of these stamps down here and turn on randomize, and then play with some of the randomization properties, and you can come in here and kind of break things up a little bit, and then start to maybe add a couple of layers and build up some detail on top of those layers. Experiment with the blending of those together to create the kind of texture that you want. We're being very vague, and so you can come in here and have a little fun with it. It doesn't have to be too specific. One more thing that I want to do is I want to dial in, add some kind of redness in some of these certain areas. So I want to add just another paint layer right in here. I'm going to turn off our stamp, and I've got this red. I'm going to get kind of a real saturated red here, and we just kind of paint in on these eyelids. Coming in here, we also kind of paint in around the nose area, and also inside the ears. So kind of come in here, maybe up here onto the ear tips a little bit. All right, so maybe something like that. And also maybe kind of around the mouth a little. Maybe not quite as much. And then I can come in and dial that down, but I just want to add a little bit of that kind of pinkish hue around the eyes and the ears. All right, so have a little fun with that. I'm just going to continue on doing the same thing here with these three layers on the rest of the body, and just get it to looking similar to this up on the head. All right, and so we'll do that in the next lesson. We'll take a look at how we can start to adjust these paint layers. So what if we have a paint layer that we've painted that's the wrong color, or we need to adjust it somehow? Well, we can do that here in Mudbox, and we'll look at that in the next lesson.